Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, my dad, Mitch McMahon, and my aunt, Lori Summerfield.
In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context to what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time he wrote these.
In this episode, we spend Thanksgiving with Bruce, including how he spent his day, what he's thankful for, and what he had for the big dinner, and why Thanksgiving 1942 was particularly memorable.
Before we get into it, it's time for our corrections and additions segment. And so our regular guest, Dale Croft, is here with an addition today. Welcome, Dale.
I'm glad to be back once again with the McMahon family.
Yeah, right. Last week we talked about how amazing the community of Lowell was at selling war bonds, but we didn't say anything about what the Lowell residents got for their money. So, Dale, do you know what did they get with these war bonds?
Yes, I did find out, and it was pretty interesting. People who bought war bonds in 1942 could redeem them for their original investment plus interest after 10 years. The government bought the bonds for $18.75 to fund the war effort, and the bonds were non-transferable, so only the purchaser could redeem them. War bonds were baby bonds, which means that they had a smaller face value than standard bonds, making them more affordable for retail investors. The bonds had a 10-year maturity, which resulted in a 2.9% return. We also talked about stamps that people could buy to support the war effort. The United States Postal Service issued war-saving stamps in 1942 to help fund World War II. The stamps came in 5 denominations: 10 cents, 25 cents, 50 cents, $1, and $5. Each stamp featured a Minuteman statue. The stamps were purchased at face value and earned no interest. They could be collected in a stamp book, with each book containing a single type of stamp. For example, a 25-cent stamp book contained 75 stamps and was worth $18.75, which was the initial price of a $25 war bond. Once enough stamps were collected, they could be redeemed for a larger war bond, such as a $25, a $50, or $100. So they didn't gain any money, but they could purchase a war bond. The government marketed war bonds and savings stamps as a patriotic duty to support the nation's war effort and a prudent investment for one's personal finances. The stamps raised billions of dollars for the government and allowed everyone in the country to save and contribute to the war effort. So that was the nice thing about the stamps. For those people that didn't have enough money, they could put a little bit on invest and make them feel like they're doing something for Bruce and our men in the war.
Very cool.
Yeah. So remember, if any listeners have a correction or additions for us, please comment or message us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, and we'll rectify it in a future episode. So we've come now to the holiday season of 1942, and Bruce is still in Merced, California for Thanksgiving, although he does have his assignment for his next stop, which we're going to hear about here in a minute. Bruce wrote 2 letters on Thanksgiving Day, November 26th. The first was in the morning of that day, so in his own words.
Thursday. Dear Mother and Dad, Thanksgiving, just another day in here. Flying, ground school, athletics, and drill. Tonight we'll have a Thanksgiving dinner, turkey and all the trimmings. Well, at least I know where I'm going to and when. We cleared the post Tuesday morning for Douglas Field in Arizona. The city of Douglas is located exactly on the border between this country and Mexico. It's a new field and should be okay. I was picked for the twin engine. After figuring I'd get pursued, I asked to be transferred. Wonder of wonders, they gave me a bi-engine. I'm well pleased with this, and by Christmas time, I'll be pushing around a job with 2 engines, steam-heated cabin, and the works. Everything is upset around here. Everyone is talking about their new fields, some disappointed, some lucky at their choice. We have so many things to do before we leave. Check our time, check our ground school, graduation party Friday night, and exercises on Saturday. I'll write later. Your loving son, J. Bruce.
Right, so Bruce mentions now that his next stop is going to be Douglas Field in Arizona for advanced flying school. And we will talk more about Douglas Field specifically in the coming episodes because he spends a lot of time there. But Dale, what should Bruce expect to do in general in advanced flight school?
Well, now that he's in advanced training, he will be flying an AT-6 if it was a single engine. But he is
Bi-engine. He's
a
very
multiple
excited
engine
about this.
Yeah, so he'll be flying an AT-9 or an AT-10 aircraft. Advanced flying school prepared a cadet for the kind of single or multi-engine airplane he was to fly in combat. Those who went to single-engine school flew AT-6 for the first 70 hours during a 9-week period, learning aerial gunnery and combat maneuvers, increasing their skills in navigation, formation, and instrument flying. Cadets assigned to a twin engine, which Bruce got, school received the same number of flying hours, 70, but did not practice combat aerobatics or gunnery. Using the AT-9, the AT-10, or the AT-17, they directed their efforts toward mastering the art of flying in a multi-engine plane in formation and increasing their ability to fly on instruments at night. So they'll probably be doing some more training in the blue box, some more cross-country flights, night flights that we talked about earlier. And also upon completing advanced flying school, he will receive his wings and commission. So hopefully he'll get his plane then.
Okay. Spoiler alert, he does get his plane. But we will get to that. He does, in other letters, he mentions that he's going to get to fly P-39s and P-40s at his next stop. So he doesn't say much about the AT-9 or 10, but maybe, I don't know. I know nothing about any of these. So do you know what these planes are like, Dale, the P-39s?
Yeah, I
P-40s?
did a little digging into that because I wanted to know what they were too. We kind of know what the B-17 is kind of like that he will be flying in the future. But the P-38 plane was the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, a twin-engine American fighter aircraft known for the distinctive twin boom design and used primarily as a long-range escort fighter and fighter bomber, as well as ground attacks during the war. It was considered one of the most effective Allied fighters of the conflict and was a constant thorn in the side of the German military, which they called the fork-tailed devil.
Ooh, all right.
If you can't miss a P-38 because it has the twin tails and it's a very distinctive plane. It was the first plane that could fly 400 miles per hour fighter in history, and one of the few that could have a 40,000-foot ceiling. It could fly up to 40,000 feet.
Wow.
The P-38 was considered to be more difficult to fly than most single-engine high-performance fighters. Pilots said it took about twice as much flight time to master the P-38's full potential. Now, the P-40 plane was a Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, a single-engine, single-seat fighter and ground attack aircraft used by most Allied powers during the war, known for its distinctive shark mouth. Remember the planes with the shark mouth painted on the sides?
Oh, yeah, okay.
It was primarily flown by the famous Flying Tigers in China against the Japanese forces. It was also called the Tomahawk by the British Commonwealth. Now, we have two citizens in Lowell besides Bruce. We had Leonard Jackson. He flew a P-51, which is similar to a P-38. And then we also have Alan Wisner that flew the P-38 and was shot down over Slovakia, which the museum will be doing some interesting stories on those two pilots.
Cool.
All right, more to learn. I'm learning an awful lot about airplanes doing this podcast. This is great. I imagine if you're Bruce and you love to fly, like that would be exciting to get to fly the faster plane that goes
Yeah, he would
higher.
love these because they go fast and you know. We also talked about the greenhouse last week. The greenhouse, and I did a little digging into that too. That was called, they were either called the greenhouse or bird cage canopies, which means they weren't open. They had metal frames around them, where the newer planes later on after World War II, they had bubbles called bubbles, which were clear plastic. So when they said flying the tips over the greenhouse, we kind of figured that out. They're flying right over the top of, or right on the bird cage of another B-17.
Okay.
All right. Wow. So this is all written on Thanksgiving. So that's in the morning. He's writing about his time going to head to Arizona. But he has Thanksgiving dinner on the base, and then he writes another letter to his family after he has a lovely Thanksgiving meal. So in his own words.
Thursday night. Dear Mother and Dad, just back from our Thanksgiving dinner, and what a meal. It was perfect. Everything in the world to eat, and was all very well prepared. I'm sending the menu to you and letting you see for yourself. It was a very nice party, but I wouldn't compare it to crackers and milk if I could eat it with you. I wrote you a letter today about our new camp, etc., but after this dinner I have the urge to write again. I'd like to write something fitting for Thanksgiving, but don't know quite how. Of course, this won't reach you until after the holiday is over, but after all, every day is a day of Thanksgiving for us. I'm sitting at this desk in my room and munching on stuffed olives that Mac flinched out of the mess hall. In the next room, there's a radio playing. Across the room, Corby, another roommate, is lying on his bunk and reading a Post. Just a nice domestic scene. You inquired about my sleep, or lack of it. We are given at least 7 hours out of every 24 to sleep. Most times we get 8 or 9 hours. The mornings after we've flown, the night before, we get extra sleep. What a sentence. Sunday night. This should give you an idea how busy I am. Just have a chance now to say goodnight. As soon as I get settled in Arizona, I'll write as usual. All my love and prayers, your loving son, J. Bruce.
Yes, we had to continue that letter like 3 days later
Yep.
to say goodbye and say goodnight. And so on the top corner of this letter, Bruce wrote in all caps, cranberry sauce, and he has an arrow pointing to a stain on the paper. So I love when he does this, and I'm always going to point it out because it's just another reason why you should be looking at the letters themselves on the Lowell Historical Museum website. We can't capture that stuff in an audio format, but that made me laugh for sure. So now it's time for our segment where we talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell when Bruce wrote these letters. So I want to start with something. Why Thanksgiving 1942 was actually a memorable Thanksgiving. I actually teach about this in my classes at GVSU because I don't think a lot of people know about the history of Thanksgiving, but we think we do. But we don't actually know. 1942, Thanksgiving 1942, it was the first time that Thanksgiving was officially made to be the fourth Thursday in November, thanks to a proclamation by Franklin Roosevelt. But there's a story to this, too. So Abraham Lincoln originally made Thanksgiving an official holiday back during the Civil War, saying it was going to be the last Thursday in November. But in 1939, the last Thursday was November 30th. So FDR decided to change Thanksgiving that year to be the second to last Thursday so that they could increase the Christmas shopping window and boost the economy, right? The war's getting started over in Europe. Well, people were not very happy with this switch. Apparently, people didn't like Christmas getting moved so far up. Crazy, right? Now considering people decorate for Christmas like in September. But so in 1940 and 41, FDR said that states could choose which week they celebrated Thanksgiving. So for 2 years, there were some states that celebrated Thanksgiving on different weeks. So as you can imagine, it's probably a little confusing. So for 1942, FDR said, all right, fine. Everyone's going to celebrate it on the fourth Thursday in November. And he made it official on November 26, 1942 with a proclamation. So that was the day that Bruce wrote these two letters. And my first thought, of course, was if you have two Thanksgivings, what day do the Lions play on? And so I re-looked this up. I said to see, well, what week did Michigan celebrate it? But actually, the Lions, even though they started playing on Thanksgiving in 1934, they did not play on Thanksgiving during the war at all. So these wartime Thanksgivings didn't really, these crazy whatever day you want celebrate Thanksgiving on didn't really affect them. So they had a little break of watching the Lions on Thanksgiving. But
Yeah.
Isn't that a crazy story? I didn't know any of
It
this.
is. It's very interesting.
For several years.
A year we didn't lose on Thanksgiving. Okay.
Yeah, a couple of them, maybe several years in a row.
Oh yeah, that was several. Yeah.
You know, we had enough strife to worry about with the war.
Yeah.
We didn't also need to be sad about the Lions on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so that's why this one in particular was memorable. But in some other letters around this time, back home in Lowell, there's some other more sad news. So the war around this time has claimed another life of a young man from Lowell. Dale, what do you know about Jim Reed? This is the person Bruce mentions in his letters.
Well, in the Lowell Ledger on November 12, 1942, there was a article on Mr. Reed. It said, Mr. and Mrs. Percy Reed received the following telegram from the Secretary of War at Washington, D.C. We regret to inform you that your son, Technician James A. Reed, headquarters, while in service of his country, was drowned in the Southwest Pacific waters on October 11th, 1942. A letter giving details will follow. Now, on November 3rd, his parents received a letter from him written October 6th saying that he was looking forward to his Christmas box. James was born December 15th, 1950, on a farm in Virginia. He graduated from Lowell High School in 1931, being an outstanding member of the first 4-H calf club organized by the county agent K.K. Vinning, winning trips to international stock shows in Memphis, Tennessee, and St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
In 1938, James was instrumental in organizing the International Harvester Implement Store in Lowell under the firm name of Percy J. Reed and Sons. His sister Mary Ann being a silent partner in the firm. He was drafted April 15th, 1941, and he left his training procedure exactly a year later. He left for the Pacific War Front. So he's quite an individual here. He had their own implement store here in town. I think that will probably be up at one of our missing buildings. Series that's going on right now through the museum.
Okay.
So you can keep an eye out for that series too.
Well, Bruce has mentioned Percy Reed in his letters before, right? So they must have known each other, obviously, because I mean they're about the same age too, roughly about the same age, anyway. So Bruce wrote a very reflective letter about this to his own parents on November 17th, 1942, in his own words.
Tuesday. Dear Mother and Dad, I just read about Jim Reed. It's too bad so many swell fellows won't be coming back. On the other hand, it's a privilege granted to only a few to be able to die for their country. My purpose in writing this letter is to try to alleviate some of the worry you have for me when you read of the other parents losing sons. I know nothing I can say will stop your anxiety for me, but I want you to know that I realize what you're going through on account of me. It just adds up to more of the things I'll never quite be able to repay you for. Never for a minute doubt that I realize all it has meant to have parents like you. Just one more favor to ask. Try not to worry. It's a sure way of getting old, and it means so much to me to know that in a few months I'll be returning to you. Everything is going swell. This camp is very pleasant, never a dull moment, and it's an experience I wouldn't miss for anything. Letters like this are kind of hard to write what you feel. It's a cinch that I could never tell you these things in person, but it does give me a chance to let you know how I feel inside. All my love and prayers, your loving son, J. Bruce. P.S. Thanks, Bern, for the apples. Brings a bit of good old Michigan to the overrated state of California.
It's such a sweet letter. I like how he ends it with a little joke, right? Like the overrated state of California. Yeah, this is definitely one of those letters where he's very, very mushy toward his parents. I don't know the way to explain it. But he's like, I could never tell you this in person. Yeah, but he's gonna write it.
Yeah, what is that phrase? It's a cinch that I could.
I think it's like it's obvious I could never tell you this
It's
in person.
Easy. Okay, it's easy that I could never tell you these things in person.
Yeah, like he would never say this to their face.
Oh,
but
yeah.
like,
It's a cinch.
like he's
It's a foregone conclusion that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he'd rather write it than say it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's tough. So we got to lighten things up too, since Bruce does this at the end of this letter with the apples. I was looking in the ledger around this time too, and I found a little blurb about a power outage in Lowell that people could not figure out the reason for. There was no storm or anything, so the ledger went right to the source, of course, Frank McMahon, and he was quoted as describing that the power outage was caused by large cranes, the bird. Not a crane. Apparently, these huge birds flew right into the power lines by Whitesbridge, I guess, and it caused like a big tangled mess and like several grass fires. So Frank had a lot to do around this week. He was clearly very busy.
Well, we're a migratory route for the cranes. You can see them fly over every spring and fall.
Are these sandhill cranes? Or?
Yeah.
What a mess. Poor Frank.
Yeah, you can hear them and see them. So, that makes sense.
Yeah, caused a lot of damage, those cranes. So, Frank has got his own things to worry about back home in Lowell. All right, well, we're going to finish today with a letter from November 23rd where Bruce looks ahead to Christmas. So, in his own words.
Monday. Dear Mother and Dad, well, we leave here Saturday. Friday we have graduation exercises and a farewell party, etc. The public is allowed on limits, so we parade in front of them. The band plays. A few speeches are made. Some colonel graduates us. And there you are, on your way to fly B-40s and 39s or whatever have you. I can't say at the time, but this Sunday I'll call from a hotel at about 12 or 1 our time. That's at 3 or 4 your time. Why not have the folks come up on the hill at about this time, and I could say hello to Bern, Marion, Helen, Veda, and Ed. They could just say a couple words so I could hear their voices. Maybe Raj could tell me about shooting his buck, or didn't he get one? Anyway, I'd like to hear their voices, but maybe just 1 or 2 of them would be more practical. I'll call again around Christmas, and I could talk to those I missed this time. If I shouldn't call, don't worry, because I might be in transit and not get the chance. You'd certainly be surprised how many fellows have seen your Christmas card. No one out here has ever seen anything like it, and most of them think you're extremely wealthy. It certainly was the most unique and expensive card I've ever seen. Well, I'm terrifically busy at the present, so I'll write again before Saturday. All my love and prayers, J. Bruce.
So since Bruce mentions it here, we got to talk about a good old McMahon Christmas card. So the Ledger suggested that at around this time that Christmas cards should go out early this year to deal with the unprecedented wartime demands of letter carrying. So Frank and Lotta must have taken that advice, and they've sent their Christmas card in early November. But like he's calling it unique and expensive. This is definitely perked my ears up. So Dad and Aunt Lori, do you remember anything about Frank and Lotta's Christmas cards?
I don't.
No.
Not theirs.
Not
not
theirs.
theirs.
Not theirs.
But-
Okay.
But Christmas cards were a big thing in our family, that's for sure. Lots of effort went into the Christmas cards every year.
Well, so I've seen some of the Bruce and Margaret Christmas cards. Tell
Yeah.
us about these. So I know that's getting ahead a
Well,
little bit.
they
but
were all handcrafted, one at a time. And I remember one was a Christmas tree fills up most of the card, and then there's small faces of us kids on as ornaments. And so it was really labor intensive. You had to cut the hole in the card and then tape like one of those little tiny school pictures on the back so that the face would poke through and look like the ornament. And there was one like this every year. I remember one where we're on a toboggan.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
and Dad is drawing the toboggan and the little bodies of us, and then of course once again we cut out holes and put the pictures behind them so that our faces are seen on the toboggan.
I have that one up at the house on.
Oh, you have
on
that
the wall.
one.
Yeah.
I think I have the Christmas tree ornament one someplace.
Yeah, okay.
We'll get those.
So
up.
Grandpa Bruce would draw the little scenes, and then you'd have your actual pictures as your faces, right? That's
Yes.
Okay.
But
I guess
it would be like a little assembly line. We'd work on them, and then of course when Lori, the baby, comes along,
Of course.
there's one dedicated just to her.
I think I actually have two.
Two. You have two
I
dedicated.
think I have two
You're
dedicated
right.
to me.
You're right. What was the other one?
The other one, I was just a little baby, and I was just sitting there, and I was just sitting there looking cute.
Of course. That's the role of
I
the
have that
youngest
one.
child, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then
Oh
the other
my
one was I'm the angel. I was my face, and I was the angel.
And then you open it up.
And then you
you're the
open it
devil.
up, and I was the devil.
Yeah.
Something
I don't
about
remember being all that enthusiastic cutting and pasting that one. But no, you did. Yeah, that's right. You got two.
I got
you got
two.
two all by yourself.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but
Imagine that.
Mitch, you got to remember, she was the last baby, so
Well, she
there
wasn't
was
in any
maybe
other
only
ones.
one picture taken of her, where Marty probably had
That's true.
100 pictures
Oh,
taken.
that's-
You know
Keep
how
that in mind.
I know that's
how
true of
each
our
baby
family.
gets less and less
Oh,
pictures
I
in
do.
the scrapbook.
All Aunt Lori has are those Christmas cards. I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, yeah. Let me tell you, I didn't have a baby book. That's for sure. I mean, I
see.
shared a baby book with Kevin.
oh,
There's some of my baby stuff in there. I don't know. By that time, that was
Oh,
enough
my
of that.
tucked it in the back.
Oh,
my
enough
God.
of those
We got to
babies.
get some of this stuff for the YouTube.
So
Hey,
Christmas
thing.
cards are legendary
my
in the
goodness.
family, is what you're saying. So this
Yeah.
is good. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
important.
Oh,
I'm-
and you've carried on the
I've tried,
the
yes.
tradition. Oh, the ones that you've done are just. It's the callback to mom and dad's that make it meaningful for me. That's
Yeah,
I do
we've-
love yours.
We're definitely not cutting out
If you ever,
little
we'll have
tiny
to show you
photos.
someday. Yeah,
We're gonna
they're
have to-
doing Photoshop. But
We're gonna have to put them on the
Oh, yeah, we got to.
YouTube for sure.
We
Yeah.
got to.
So it's nice to know too, though, that Frank and Lotta, I don't know if they were cutting out people's faces, but they were clearly doing something
something to look fancy. Yeah.
fancy
Unique.
and expensive
Well,
to make them look rich.
If you look at Christmas cards back in that time period, the cards were very elaborate and very beautiful.
Ornate,
They were
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
If you go to the museum and look at some of the old cards that are on our site that you can look at, they're gorgeous cards compared to now. So it could have been just
Well, shout out,
it could have been just a beautiful card. done.
Shepherd Drive, Dr. Shepherd and Lori, who lived on Reservoir Hill as well. She sold Christmas cards. I remember the books would come.
Oh.
They'd come with the books, and you'd look at those cards, and they were
Oh, that could be a
beautiful.
possibility.
Just
Right.
beautiful. And you choose,
Oh.
get to choose what you wanted.
Well, he mentions them in the next coming weeks.
that's
so
good. He does?
maybe,
Okay.
yeah. Not about Christmas cards necessarily, but Christmas in
But
general.
Doc Shepherd? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's been, been fun reminiscing about the holidays and Christmas, but that's just about it for today. And we're actually going to be taking a 2-week break. And we're going to be back in 2 weeks on October 10th. And I think October 10th, I'm pretty sure. And we're going to finish off with kind of like what I've been calling season 1 of the podcast with 1942.
We got renewed. We already know we know we were renewed
we have
for the
some more
next 4
content.
years.
We have some more content. So we're going to
3
finish
years.
off with 1942, and Bruce does go to Douglas, Arizona, and then we'll be fresh and ready for. We got to plan the next step, this next set of letters. So we'll be back in a couple weeks. So don't forget about us. There's much more to the story, and we're just getting started. So take these 2 weeks to get caught up with our 11 other episodes
go.
on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. The Lowell Historical Museum has digitized versions of Bruce's letters, so you can read them in full, along with primary sources for most of the people, places, and events we've talked about here today, plus more. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. Thank you to Roger McNaughton for our podcast music and to WRWW 92.3 FM for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. Tune in or stream WRWW at lowellradio.org. See you next time.